station, Manx Radio.
Moramai, good morning. This is Judith Lay welcoming you to Manx Radio and to the podcast of this week's edition of At Your Service.
Manx Radio.
Well, as is so often the case with this programme, we've got a question to answer. And this week it is, what does it mean to seek God's kingdom right where you are? You could be at work, maybe looking after the children, or out visiting friends. But whatever we're doing, God can work through us to bring his kingdom here, as in heaven. And that's the theme of our first piece of music. It's called We Seek Your Kingdom. And it's a whole life worship song to the tune of a much-loved hymn, Abide With Me. And the words have been written by Noel Robinson, Andy Flannagan and Graham Hunter. And its purpose is to inspire us to see our daily tasks through God's eyes and live out the prayer, Your Kingdom Come, in every part of our life. It's a declaration that each of us can join in God's kingdom work right where we are. And a prayer that through ordinary Christians like you and me, God will transform, revive and heal our society. After the music, one of its writers, Andy Flannagan, talks more about how joining in God's kingdom work can transform society.
Seek your kingdom throughout every sphere.
We long for heaven's demonstration here. Jesus, your light shine bright for all to see. Transform, revive, and heal society.
Before all things, in him all things were made. Inspiring culture, media and trade.
May all our work serve your economy.
Transform, revive, and heal society. Peace, truth, and justice reigning everywhere. With us be present in our public square.
Fill all who lead with your integrity.
Transform, revive, and heal society.
Forgive us, Lord, when we have not engaged.
Failing to scribe your heart on history's page. Make us
again what we were made to be.
transform, revive, and heal society.
Who's praying for your neighbourhood? If it's not you, who is it? All over the world, people are discovering the joy and power of blessing their communities. Ordinary people like you and me are welcoming the presence of Jesus to wherever they live and work and speaking blessings over those places. In one UK local house of prayer, the team felt led to speak blessing on the ears of the people who would walk down a certain lane. Sometime later, a class from the nearby primary school were on a nature walk, and their teacher encouraged the children to stop in this lane and listen. Most of them just heard bird song, but a 5-year-old boy said that he heard God telling him to lie down on the grass and pray to Jesus. In Zambia, people blessed their land, and it was the only area that avoided the scourge of army worms. In Australia, warring neighbours were reconciled when people spoke blessing over their street. Some may know stories from Argentina and elsewhere where believers have taken responsibility for certain streets until whole areas of towns and cities are covered. A common pattern has emerged. Folks pray and speak blessing regularly for months and see nothing change. But at a certain point, everyone reports feeling something shift, sensing that the dark clouds have been blown away, letting the light in. Suddenly, the standard weekly work with the homeless or young people, which had just been ticking over, is seeing lives transformed, sometimes miraculously. Some of us are so busy working on the ground that we don't stop to think about the overhead conditions. So could we say, this is my little piece of earth, and I'm going to pray your kingdom come right here. What would your street look like and feel like if it was transformed by the power of the gospel of the kingdom? What would stop? What would start?
And in the clearness of the morning I looked, and I saw there was no more asthma, no more unwanted pregnancies, no more debt, no more violence, and no one was too busy. I saw homes without locks on the doors, where a welcome was always guaranteed.
You don't need to think of yourself as a leader. You are qualified because God has placed you right where you live and work. That is your turf. Are there any other believers nearby who could pray with you? There's such a power in a community of agreement. Local houses of prayer have a bucket load of resources to help get you going. Why not start by just blessing 3 people on your street today? Who's praying for your street? It's not me, but it could be you.
That's Andy Flannagan talking about the power of praying that God would work through us right where we are. And it's a theme we're going to hear more about now in conversation with Andy Leyser, a recent visitor to the island who has a special ministry as part of the retreat house called Flannagan in Pembrokeshire. Anne is almost always travelling, encouraging, inspiring and assisting people to become local houses of prayer, helping ordinary people to do exactly what Andy was talking about there, become people who bless their local community, their colleagues, their friends and family, simply by praying that God would work in and through them. Let's join Andy Leyser now as she talks about the retreat house, Flannagan, and her own passion for local houses of prayer.
This is a small retreat house in West Pembrokeshire. It's called Flannagan. It's got history like many places on your isle. And St Brynach in 500s AD, angels came to minister to him on this land. And there's been a retreat centre there for a number of years. But just in recent years, just an increase of the sense of his presence, which is very exciting.
A retreat house in itself would be a blessing to its community and perhaps to a wider community of the people who come to stay there. But the ministry that you are involved in, Local Houses of Prayer, is encouraging us, ordinary people like me, to be a people of blessing. So let's start at the beginning. Tell me about the Local House of Prayer movement, please, Anne.
Well, it very much came out of this retreat centre. Some of the principles about the presence of God and our calling as priests in our communities to take our place and to speak and release God's blessings. And I think it was Justin Welby who said a few years ago, before any new move of God, there is a new wave, a new expression of prayer. It's not as though it's something new and the Celts knew all about blessing, but sometimes God fans into flame something that we've lost in our church history. So local houses of prayer, as I say, has come out of Flannagan. It's come out of some of the principles of the importance of God's presence, our calling as priests to take our place, to stand in his presence, to carry not just his words, but his presence. And out of that place of presence, speak and release God's blessings. There are many other aspects to it, and be very happy to share those with anybody who's interested. But it's just a sense of God's presence, his blessings that as we take our place need to be released in all spheres of influence, I believe, not just in our streets and our communities, but in our government offices, in our workplaces. There's a really interesting book by a guy called Graham Tomlin called The Widening Circle. And I love the subtitle. It's Priesthood, God's way of blessing the world. And so I just think God's put together in the simplicity of local houses of prayer some important ingredients as we pray, as we bless, as we seek his presence, and as we engage with our community, be that our workplace or our street, that we take our place, we seek his kingdom, and we bless what he starts to do in our midst. So it was out of stories where we just began to see an increase of God's presence. It wasn't about great people praying. It was about people meeting with God in a place of his presence, the people of God blessing what God is doing and just celebrating the good news stories.
We have to get over this idea of priesthood. We see priesthood as being something that people who are called to as a specific ministry, they're trained for. And we have our priests in vicars, ministers in all denominations. But we feel unworthy for that title to be applied to ordinary people. And we need to get over that, don't we?
We absolutely do. And 1 Peter 2:9 is just very clear about it. It is the priesthood of all believers. And I love even Moses, right at the beginning when the call of God came to him, he said, "Who am I?" And I don't know about you, but I can relate to that when I'm in challenging situations and I'm sensing God asks me to do things that I don't feel qualified to do. God didn't even answer the question. He said, "My presence will go with you." And Moses, of course, latched onto that in Exodus 33. He said, "I'm not going anywhere unless your presence goes with me." So I think sometimes we need to get over ourselves and recognize this isn't a season about our ability, our qualifications. It's about our availability to say yes to Jesus. Even though we may not feel qualified, it's his presence with us, and it's our yes that releases just his kingdom purposes to those people around. I remember very well, just relating back to what you said when we were sharing about these principles of local house of prayer with a group in Nepal. And this lady came up to me with tears running down her eyes. And she said, and I didn't know that I could do this. I didn't know that I could speak blessings over my brothers and sisters and my community. And it's as though God is giving a voice, his voice, back to the voiceless in an upside-down kingdom kind of way that he seems to be good at.
Well, we see a lot of examples of it in the Bible, don't we? Through Jesus' ministry, he took ordinary people. He took people with a very dubious past, with occupations that were frowned upon, tax collectors, people who were not the most honest in the community. And he often showed that they had a deeper understanding of what his ministry was all about than his disciples who spent a lot of time with him. So we need to go back and take the Bible as our model, don't we?
We absolutely do. I mean, there's no question in my mind about it, that it's actually in our humility and our vulnerability, but our willingness to say yes. And humility is not about cowering back from what God is asking us to do. It's knowing that he is going to be with us. But I think there's something beautiful about that, because when we come in that place of vulnerability and humility, then all the glory goes to him, because they know, they look at us and think, well, it's got to be God, hasn't it? Because we come in our simplicity.
So let's be practical about this now. Suppose I'm listening to you, as I am doing, and thinking, I want to do that. I want to be a person of blessing. I want to be this vessel that God is going to flow through. How do we do it?
Well, we've just really taken, I believe, just very simple principles that I believe God has given us, actually. And we've been sharing that. So we share these things in training days and online as well. But it really is an invitation into a lifestyle. So what that looks like very practically is we get over ourselves and recognize that actually God may be calling me. So we say yes to Jesus for our community, our workplace, maybe our hospital, whatever it is where God has placed us, our piece of earth. And then we might seek to find one other person who is in that community, because there's something about the power of agreement. So whether it's a workplace, whether it's a street, whether it's a community, we find somebody else. You can start on your own. And we pray and we bless, and the things that we look at in more detail. It is about not praying that God will bless, because if we look at even the Aaronic blessing, so shall you speak to the people of Israel and I will bless them. So we look, when we're exploring these principles, at the difference between intercession and blessing. And these simple things of praying and blessing for 5 people in our streets and our communities. We seek to come together as maybe 1 or 2 of us, preferably more than 1, because, as I say, there is a power of agreement. We invite the manifest presence of God. We share the good news stories of what God is doing. We bless what he's doing, because in many ways, blessing is a multiplication of favor. And we speak blessings over our community every week, over the businesses, over the people in leadership. And we pray using the Lord's Prayer. So very, very simple things. We have what we call the Caleb questions. Now, you won't find Caleb questions in the Bible, but Caleb and Joshua, they had a different spirit. And everybody knew there were giants in the land. And I'm sure if I asked all of you what the giants are here in the Isle of Man, you'd be able to tell me. But they knew that they could take the land because God had promised it. They were not just people of vision and faith, but they persevered. And we know that there was a gap of about 46 years between Caleb receiving a promise in Numbers 13:30 to actually taking the land. So there's very simple principles. And, if people are interested, we'd love to explore those with you. And what we're seeing amongst the nations really is people just saying yes to Jesus, from Nigeria to Nepal to Australia, and just taking their place. And we're learning there are no experts in this. That's what I love about an army of ordinary people. I don't think this is a season about people with microphones and platforms. I think it's a time where we, as I say, have to rise up, and we're learning from each other.
Presumably this spans any denomination.
Absolutely. And I think that's the power of it, really, is that you can be in a street and you can come together across your denominations for your community, for the breaking in of the kingdom in your community. And as we know, there's such power in that kind of unity. There's something very powerful about coming together outside our church buildings for his kingdom to break in. So I'm so, as I say, excited to be here in the Isle of Man, because I just believe you've got such spiritual history here, and we're in a season where who knows what the future is going to look like post-COVID, but I think we all recognize it's not going to be the same. So as we stand together at the crossroads and look and ask where the ancient paths are, I'm excited to be connected with brothers and sisters like yourselves here on the Isle, and all the spiritual heritage that you have here that God may want to renew for this new season.
I was talking with Andy Leyser about becoming a people of blessing, bringing God's kingdom alive wherever we are. If you'd like to know more, there's a website, localhousesofprayer.org, and Local Houses of Prayer is all one word, all lowercase. The Great Big Green Week began yesterday, a week of events and activities drawing together a huge number of secular organisations and churches of all denominations, calling for the world's governments to take action to address the biggest crises of our time and work together for a just and green recovery. One that provides vaccines and healthcare for everyone, fights poverty and injustice, and helps end the climate and nature crisis. And on the programme next week, we'll be talking more about the impact and the long-term effect of this week. And the need to value creation and make our world a fairer place for everyone is the theme for our final song this morning, Graham Kendrick's God of the Poor.
Beauty for brokenness, hope for despair. Lord, in the suffering, this is our prayer. Bread for the children, justice, joy, peace. Sunrise to sunset, your kingdom increase. Shelter for fragile lives, cure for their ills. Work for the craftsmen, trade for their skills. Land for the dispossessed, rights for the weak. Voices to plead the cause of those who can't speak. God of the poor, friend of the weak, give us compassion, we pray. Melt our cold hearts, let tears fall like rain. Come change our love from a spark to a flame. Refuge from cruel wars, havens from fear, cities for sanctuary, freedoms to share. Peace to the killing fields, scorched earth to green. Christ for the bitterness, his cross for the pain. God of the poor, friend of the weak, give us compassion, we pray. Melt our cold hearts, let tears fall like rain. Come change our love from a spark to a flame. Rest for the ravished earth, oceans and streams, plundered and poisoned, our future, our dreams. Lord, and our madness, carelessness, greed, make us content with the things that we need. God of the poor, friend of the weak, give us compassion, we pray. Melt our cold hearts, let tears fall like rain. Come change our love from a spark to a flame.
Graham Kendrick and Beauty for Brokenness. And we finish today with a look at some items from our notice board. The Great Big Green Week will be the theme of the service at Abbeylands Chapel this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Reverend Steve Ingrall will lead it and all are welcome. Also this afternoon at 3 o'clock, there are 2 Harvest Thanksgiving services. One is in St Adamnan's, Lonnon Old Church, and the other is in Ballakilferrick Chapel, where the service will be led by Reverend Dr Janet Corlett with soloist Paul Costain. Peel Methodist Church invite you to Ferrairn this evening at 6 o'clock. Held on the third Sunday of every month at Peel Methodist Church, this contemporary service is relaxed, informal and refreshing. Incidentally, Flannagan means a freshwater spring. Activities available tonight will include worship through a dance workshop, crafts, creative writing, sensory prayer stations, Bible reflections on a passage from Mark's Gospel and journaling. All ages are welcome, just come as you are. That's Flannagan in Peel Methodist Church tonight at 6. There's Taizé worship tonight in St James's Church in Dalby, starting at 6:30, a candlelit evening service with peaceful, prayerful music and time for quiet reflection. Sunday night at 8, concerts at the Promenade Methodist Church in Douglas continue tonight with music from the choir Manx Voices. It's free admission with refreshments afterwards and an opportunity to make a donation as you leave. And as the name suggests, the concert at the Prom tonight starts at 8 o'clock. Into the week ahead now, and Ballakilferrick Chapel complete their harvest celebrations on Wednesday the 22nd, with a harvest coffee morning from 10:30 till 12 noon. Paul Moores of the Leprosy Mission is on the island this week, meeting friends old and new. He'll be in Grace Baptist Church in Onken at 7:30 on Wednesday evening, and on Thursday he'll be in the Bethel Church in Ramsey for a charity challenge celebration starting at 7:30. And there'll be more about the young people involved in that charity challenge on next week's programme. And Paul will be at 2 services next Sunday, Broadway Baptist Church in Douglas at 10:30 and Ballagary Chapel next Sunday evening at 6:30. The Thursday night concert in St Catherine's Church in Port Erin will be given this week by Russian Silver Band. This is the last in a very successful series of summer concerts and a good moment to thank everyone involved, artists, audiences and the organising team. Once again, the start time is 7:45, admission is free and there are refreshments in the hall afterwards. And looking ahead to next weekend, Glen May Chapel's Harvest in the Barn is next Saturday, the 25th, at 6:30, and as usual will be at Ballacregan Farm, Glen May. Traditional harvest hymns and readings with music led by Crosby Silver Band, and Reverend Carol Fox will lead the service and preach, and it'll be followed by refreshments and the auction of produce. Ballacregan Farm is at the end of Sound Road in Glen May. Go to the bottom of Glen May Hill and follow the signs to Harvest in the Barn. Everybody will be made most welcome. There's another harvest celebration starting next Sunday. This is in St Luke's Church in Baldwin, where there'll be a harvest service next Sunday evening starting at 6:30. Then the following evening, Monday the 27th, also in St Luke's, there'll be a harvest concert, supper and auction starting at 7 o'clock. Admission is just £5. There's entertainment with Linda Corkish, Helen Prescott, Jude Clegg and John Riley, followed by supper, an auction of produce and a raffle for a full lamb dinner. And that's all that we have time for today. News for the notice board and requests for your favourite hymns to be included in future programmes can all be sent to me via email, judithlay@manxradio.com. I'll be back tonight at 9 with Sundown, easy listening music to round off your weekend. But for now, this is Judith saying thank you for listening, and I wish you and those you love a blessed and peaceful week and a very good morning.
Station, Manx